Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the first of some exciting interview podcasts from the Edinburgh International Film Festival. We've been so lucky to meet with some amazing acting talent and behind the scenes names. I'm excited to share our conversations about movies, the festival and cinema with these folk with you. The first in the series is discussing the movie Modern Life is Rubbish. You'll firstly hear actor Ian Hart, who plays music manager Curve, then director Daniel Jerome Gill and writer Philip Gawthorne, and finally Steven MacKintosh, who plays Lenny the barman. Modern Life is Rubbish charts the relationship between Liam and Natalie, initially drawn together by their shared love for music. 10 years later, they're struggling to see what they saw in each other in the first place. As they start to split their music library, the soundtrack of their relationship keeps on pulling them back together. So let's dive in, and thank you to Ian, Philip, Daniel and Steven for giving up their time to talk with us. Enjoy the show. I'm joined by Ian Hart, who plays Curve in Modern Life is Rubbish. How are you today?
Not too bad. I'm enjoying the weather.
You feeling a bit hungover or tender after the premiere last night?
No. I'm not too old, too long in the tooth now to do that. I'll go home early.
How did you find last night? It was a brilliant premiere.
It was good. The thing about premieres, after parties or whatever else, is 8 million people you don't know.
Yeah.
Who've just seen you in a film, so they do know who you are, but you've no idea who they are.
Absolutely.
So you have lots of, like when you meet someone new, you have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
You'll get to know each other. So you end up having that conversation 25 times, then you go home.
Probably don't get a chance to even talk to your friends.
I didn't see anyone I knew for more than 5 minutes.
Absolutely, yeah. It was I thought it was a fantastic movie last night, and you should all be very proud of it.
It was a really good choice just to open the film with that. Open the festival with that. I think it's a really brave bit of programming.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually had to start my film festival with Modern Life is Rubbish. That was my first screening of Monday morning, 9 a.m. So
Jesus, man, you're die hard.
Well, thankfully I lived just across the street from the cinema, so it was quite an easy transition. But what was it that attracted you to kind of the role of Curve? It kind of stands out a little bit from some of your previous roles.
I don't know. It's the whole kind of notion of self-delusion. Yeah. If that makes any sense. The kind of thing about people create characters for themselves that we're not really honest about what we did, about the fact that we do that. But if you look at anyone's Facebook profile or anyone's Instagram,
you've been checking mine then.
Well, you know what I mean. It's a falsehood.
Yeah.
It's a constructed narrative.
Uh-huh.
And so the Curve as a character is an entirely constructed narrative. So it's not a real character. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course.
It's someone's invention. I thought that was that was really kind of down. I liked it. I'd seen the short that Dan had made, and I also think it's really vastly important to keep doing independent films.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point? If you know what I mean. If you've got something, experience or whatever, then you can help and add to something. Then you should.
And I suppose, for yourself, you're talking about this delusion of a character. I suppose it's quite meta to create a character to then develop a character on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. As well. We can never see the other character until the very end. Yeah. We all do it to one degree or another. Some better than others.
As someone that worked in Tesco as a student, I can highly relate to someone quite like him. That was for sure. I was like, oh yeah, I knew a guy like that when I worked at Tesco.
Yeah, there's loads of them up and down the country somewhere,
So what was when you were kind of putting this character together? You've got this whole kind of history of larger than life music managers and programmers. What kind of characters did you draw upon, or musical influences from your past that
I think a lot of it is kind of about missing the mark. If that makes any sense. So you see that characteristic expressed in somebody, and then it's almost like a deliberate attempt to not quite achieve that. Everything about his perceived self is just a bit wrong. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's a little bit out of step with. I mean, the main characters in the band are living in the present, and he's almost living in the past. It's almost like Slade had to split up. Sweet or Mock the Hooper was still on tour.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
There's a kind of, you know what I mean. It's not. He's not like Oasis's manager.
No.
He's not like I don't know.
Who he likes to claim he is.
The Happy Mondays manager. Because I know those people from back in the olden days or whatever. It's nothing like that. It's it's more of a kind of Rod Stewart's tour manager from 1971 than it is anything that's based in now.
And very appropriate here in Scotland that you've been inspired by Rod Stewart's tour manager.
God bless Rod.
I'm sure you've seen many a sight in those days. Like
before he did Vegas.
Like when I was watching, I found it quite incredibly relatable. Like watching this character that like articulates his love life through like music, and I was like, oh god, I was probably that insufferable as like a teenager with my music.
All of us are.
Yeah. And what were you like as kind of a teenager with like your music? Did you have like certain albums that you loved to try and impress women with, or certain musical mantras?
For the melancholic moments when you've been rejected, I had more of them. I had plenty of them albums. I think the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds was a huge thing for me, album for me, in terms of it's got a total narrative quality to it, a story being told. And you start to realise that was going. And when you're a kind of kid, you just listen to tracks. Mm-hmm. The album, as a storytelling medium, you know what I mean? There's like track follows track follows track, that you go to a journey.
I suppose they make that point in the movie as well.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that was something that you click on, you turn on to, you know what I mean? Which initially you just hear songs through the radio passively. You don't make any connection between who it is who's singing them, even as a little kid. You reach a point when you're a teenager when music makes sense to you.
Absolutely.
In a deeper way than it ever did when you were a kid.
So like when you were kind of like, if you were kind of putting this movie together, like would it be like certain songs that you would have picked like for some of the scenes that you would think when like they're having that first night together and they're tuning into the radio, or when they're like he's saying he loves you for the first time? Did you have any like songs you thought of, I remember what song I picked when I was in that moment?
Yeah, there's bits and pieces. There's certain albums that I remember being in the car with my girlfriend who's now my wife, and this track was playing, or I was trying to play this track. When you try and not influence someone else, but you try and bring them into your music, which you think is yours.
Absolutely.
You don't realise everyone else has already had it for ages, and it's probably theirs anyway. But you think it's yours, and so you think, oh, they never did this one. This one's going to blow their heads off. This one. I remember thinking Tom Waits again. I suppose as a storyteller, I suppose it's for him, and in an odd way, I'm drawn to those kind of style of music, Willie Nelson or whatever, There's a Tom Waits album, it's One from the Heart, which is a soundtrack album, which obviously, because it's a soundtrack album, is structured in a completely narrative sense. And I remember that being a kind of, do you know what I mean? I don't know, a connective, like whether we all deluded ourselves. Everyone thinks of someone else. I always thought, maybe I'm Tom Waits, maybe I could be Tom Waits. You know what I mean?
I suppose you get the opportunity in that movie to be like those characters of days gone by.
But it's it's someone you think, oh wow, that's we project onto people an otherworldliness that it's when you, I don't know, do you know writer Charles Bukowski, if you see him being interviewed, it's like, oh wow, the character of Bukowski, which is a falsehood to a degree, is in such an engaging, shambolic genius that it's like which reflects in his books, that you kind of go, oh, it'd be great to be him. It'd be terrible.
Absolutely.
An absolutely hopeless alcoholic who couldn't form a relationship. You're thinking that's not a good thing to be. But there's a certain romance attached to it that you invest in.
Exactly, especially for those like periods of time. It's always like when you see that person behind the bar, you think, oh, they're such a character. But like, in that 15 minutes, but it must be insufferable to be that person's husband, father.
Miserable.
And like throughout the film, they always talk about like desert island discs. Like it was impossible watching the film not to start thinking, oh, what would be my desert island disc? Did you have like a personal one that stuck out where you thought, oh, that would be my desert island disc?
No, but I remember once, kind of in a slightly parallel, tangential, non-parallel, tangential way, I'd been doing something similar to this, doing publicity and I hadn't read the list thoroughly. And one of them was, I think it was, I can't remember which, I think it was radio or BBC Radio, and it was very similar. It was Tracks of Our Years or something like that. We had to choose some tracks, and I'd not prepared anything. And it was only when the next guy came in, he went, "This is Jeff from BBC Radio," and I went like that. So you're Ian, your tracks. So I had literally had my phone in my hand, and I shuffled the last, and I came up with Dr. Dre or something, and I was having to just talk utter nonsense about why that was the most important track to me.
All your years of acting experience coming
things
to the fore of BBC Radio.
Gangsters. I can relate to that, when you make it shot by the cops. You're like, I had no idea. Jesus, talking at me arse.
It just reminds me of growing up in Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly like that. No, it doesn't.
So, like, obviously the film's premiering tonight. Are you looking forward to that? And, like, is this your first time going to be seeing it as a completed project?
Yes, well, I haven't seen the film before now, so tonight will be the first opportunity I get. So, I don't really like to see things I'm in.
Uh-huh.
I don't have any desire to see anything I'm in,
Yeah.
because I can't see any benefit for me personally speaking. I just get I find it negative.
Yeah.
I don't find it a positive. I don't say, oh, this is what I did wrong, this is what I could do better. I just find that demoralising, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So
my flat's actually just across the street from the cinema, so you're welcome to pop in.
all right, then I might pop in and have a
some Tom Waits
pop
for
in,
like 2 hours.
yeah, exactly.
And then just pop up.
Do a
to
couple
the Q&A.
of Tom Waits albums and half a pint of Guinness, and I'm fine.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, I hope people like it. I really do hope people like it. I hope people respond to it and have a connection with it. But from my point of view, I can't go back and change it, and because I can't, and I'd want to.
Yeah.
Then I just find the whole cycle kind of destructive.
Yeah. And finally, on a positive note, like, what other kind of material are you going to be films are you working on soon that you won't be watching yourself in?
Do you know what? I've just finished. I did another. I just finished. Maybe 6-7 months on a TV show up in Hungary and in the Ukraine, and so I've absolutely no desire whatsoever to work for the moment. At the moment,
Quite right.
I'm quite happy enjoying this summer, and I'll wait to see what the autumn brings.
Any summer plans? Thorpe Park or?
No, I'm going to Lakes.
Oh,
Going to
very
Lake
good.
District. Yeah, going to Cumbria next week. I've got my kids my youngest one's doing exams, and in a week's time it'll all be over. And all of us sit down. I mean, take the dog for a walk.
Sounds good. Well, I'll let you get away with you and your dog. Thank you
Nice
so
one.
much for coming on. I
Pleasure.
really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
So I'm joined by the writer and director of Modern Life is Rubbish. So thank you so much for joining me here in Edinburgh. So, like, I feel quite bad. Like, I watched your first mini movie of Modern Life is Rubbish on my mobile phone, which I'm sure the main character in the movie would be violently disgusted by. I watched it on the bus when I was on the way to watch the first screening. So what kind of inspired you to revisit something that you'd done maybe kind of 8-9 years ago? Has it been like an itch you couldn't get rid of?
I think what happened with the short film is it just got such a great response. And one of the things that we thought after people saw it was, maybe we should make it into a feature. And then, Phil, over to you.
It was just one of those stories that wouldn't go away, I think, and it was almost like there was we kept being asked, what are you going to do? We want to know more. I think people sort of fell a bit in love with the characters, with the story. I think it was very relatable, and so it wasn't so much a case of, why don't we go and dig out Modern Life is Rubbish? It had been from the initial short film. It's been a constant, push to try and get this feature made.
People always wanted to know what happens at the end of the short film.
It's your own Before Sunset.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. What happens to Natalie and Liam, next? That was always the question. What happens next? So I think we thought, hey, maybe we should work out what happens next.
Was there ever a temptation to get Rafe Spall and was it Rebecca Knight to play the roles again, or was it always an idea that we'll kind of go for perhaps a new, younger crowd?
As you know, in the feature, it takes place over 10 years, and not saying Rafe Spall's an old man, but to play a 20-year-old may have been a little bit of a leap of faith for the audience. So we always needed someone who was going to be able to play someone at uni, and someone who was in their 30s, early 30s. So that was one of the main reasons why I didn't go back there, and also I just felt like we needed some fresh spin on it, fresh faces.
So, obviously, there's some kind of carryover from certain lines and of dialogue and some of the music. Like Radiohead, Kitty is still just as important in this movie, but obviously soundtracks have changed since then. What kind of did you inspire? What kind of made you pick, say, the Vaccines and the Cooks? And I find that incredibly relatable because I'm kind of now 30, and I think back to when I was a student, it was like the Cooks, the Vaccines, and it was like, oh, this is just too relatable at points.
I think that was part of, obviously Head Cleaner, the fictional band in the film, is an indie rock band. Yeah. So I always wanted indie rock music, and Vaccines, Kooks, Radiohead, those are all my, some of my favourite bands when I was growing up, and I thought right, these are the tracks I want in the film, you know. And we were lucky actually because I'd say I got 90% of the tracks I wanted, which was, you know, I was charmed to do that.
And when you're like writing the script, do you kind of include like, they go to a vaccines gig, or is it like insert indie music?
No, yeah, it was actually very specific because I mean I tend to think. This sounds hideously pretentious. I think in Music Man, but I actually do write specific songs in the script, especially with a film like this that is so specific. And also, we needed to be mindful of what was actually out at that time. What is going to hit that tone that is going to take people back to around that period. So hopefully, by what you've just said, we kind of did our job because it touched. That takes me back to that particular time, that particular period.
So you have that sense of nostalgia.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
so
that.
it was a specific series of choices that were very carefully considered from the beginning.
But when you wrote the script, you did put, you know, we did discuss a lot of the music, and each scene Phil wrote the music. Didn't use quite a lot of them. But some of them were.
Some of them end up not being, you know, for various reasons. They're either often too expensive, or you know, our film was a relatively low budget film. But what's amazing, I think, is that it's like a blockbuster soundtrack for a relatively small movie. So we really kind of looked out.
Also, what happens when you get into the edit and you had an idea of a track that you love. And then you get into the edit and you realise that actually the pacing of it doesn't quite work for that track. So then you just try other tracks and, you know, experiment.
Like it's got under my skin. Like as soon as I saw it, like I've been listening to a lot of that old music that kind of in the movie that I was like, go listen to the vaccines again. So it's really hit a chord with me in that respect.
Well, some of the music in it was obviously Scottish as well.
Yeah,
because Frightened Rabbit, which opens the film, you know, that is one of my favourite Scottish bands.
I know, it's immediately you're taken in and go, there's a real Scottish flavour to that, so it worked with the Scottish audience.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And I found it quite interesting because, like, it maybe says more about me, but when I was watching this movie, I thought that the character was like so painfully real at some points, and I was like, I was doing sort of things like that, or I was coming away with that lines or that pretentious dialogue that we all say to like impress women, and it's quite a tightrope that you've got to navigate with this like main character, where, you know, at points that he's proven to be sort of unlikable to his girlfriend, but we're kind of rooting for him at the same time. How did you kind of keep that kind of going through the film, where, you know, you've got this character that's, you know, essentially very dumpable, and then making him someone that you still want to root for the whole time?
I mean, I would give all the credit in the world to Dan and Josh on that, because I think it was something that this has had various incarnations as plays, and we've been blessed with incredible performers in every incarnation of this story. But I think Dan and Josh were able to expertly walk that tightrope, where I think Josh just is so instantly likable, and he played him with so much vulnerability and charm that in his more dickish kind of moments, though, you know, again, I think that's, you know, you're still kind of on his side because you understand where it's coming from. You know,
it's a very thin line, and where sometimes people watch the short film and they're like, you know, I don't really. He's not very likable, that character. It's very this character could be unlikable, but what we did is we tried to make him soft and make him likable, and absolutely Josh did that very well. And, I think it was a great bit of casting.
Absolutely,
it could have gone the other way very easily.
Yeah. I mean, for you, Daniel, this is like your first feature film, and like, you know, you look through your IMDb and it's like so extensive, and like you've worked on movies like Harry Potter, Sunshine, Game of Thrones. Like, going into making like your first feature film, like what things did you sort of pick up on being on, like, say, the set with people like Danny Boyle and on some of these other big productions you worked on? Like, you've got all this experience and now you've got all the toys.
I don't think there's anything that prepares you, actually. You know, with working with all these great directors and all these great film sets, you're not really as prepared as when you actually are in the director's seat and suddenly everything's being thrown at you and you're trying to make the best possible movie you can. It's such a sort of whirlwind experience. I mean, obviously, I felt a little bit less stressed than maybe most first-time directors, because I've been on so many film sets, and it is quite a daunting experience to have, you know, 80 to 100 odd people looking at you and asking the questions and expecting this and expecting that, and I knew the pre-production process very well because I'd been amongst that many times. So I think that equipped me, but you're never prepared for what happens to you on a daily basis, you know.
And it's not put you off. Are you going to be working on another feature or working together again?
Yeah, well, I'm working on my stuff, and we've got something cooking. Me and Phil got something cooking, and I'm doing a bit of writing as well. So I'm working on a black comedy, a sci-fi thriller, and a sci-fi rom-com. You know,
sounds just right up our street.
So lots of different varieties, and it hasn't put me off. No, I'm ready to do another one.
So when you're like kind of watching this movie, is there like a last question? Like it was impossible not to escape thinking like, what was the kind of the music of my youth when I was like chasing after women or trying to show off women? What was like kind of the soundtrack to your youth, and what was your desert island disc that you would go for?
Go on, Phil.
Well,
it's all the hard-hitting questions. I thought it was an appropriate T-shirt to wear as well.
I was going to say I love the T-shirt. I think I was going through. I was very into OK Computer. I was sort of obsessed with that album, which was it dealt with a lot of similar themes. I think of technology and when you're in that period. There was the emo-ness, the aching angst of that album, and it was. I'm not doing it any kind of disservice. It's a work of genius, but that to me was the one of the most potent soundtracks of my youth, and that's why they're referenced so heavily in the movie, because I think they're just true pioneers, and they're just really amazing.
You're going to annoy a lot of second-hand record owners that are going to have like kids coming in and like tearing through their backlog of OK Computer. I was thinking like, I had that album. I was like, and I probably pawned it off like 30p.
I think it was only the first 1,000. I could be speaking out of turn, but I think it was only the first X amount of copies maybe that had that. But it is a true tidbit.
Yeah, there's gonna be like scavenger hunts all through second-hand record stores in London and up and down the country. Like,
well, that's it. It's the tactility that we kind of lost.
A lot of people.
It's a great illustration.
A lot of people, when they saw the short film, said to me they raced home and literally went into their Kid A album because they didn't know about that. But I think one of the things that Phil and I connected on was that we're just massive Radiohead fans. I mean, we do have quite a similar music taste. Although I was very much Oasis rather than Blur.
I was Blur, some solidarity.
But I'm from the north. I'm from the northwest. So to be honest, there was a big. That was Oasis country, hardcore Oasis country, and there was certainly a little bit of a north-south and kind of a class divide that fed into that whole thing, which I think in the end was brilliant for both of them. I think that all the publicity surrounding that was brilliant for both of them, and I don't think it needs to be mutually exclusive. I think you can love Blur and Oasis.
Yeah, I mean there's some great Blur. Don't get me wrong, there's some great Blur tracks, but I was always Oasis was always my favourite.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and all that stuff. We really appreciate it. Good luck with the movie when it comes out in September. Hopefully, it'll go really well tonight, your premiere, and I'm sure it'll be an exciting opportunity for you to see a dream kind of come true.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, real pleasure to meet you. All the best.
Thank you.
I'm joined by Steven MacKintosh, who plays Lenny the barman in Modern Life is Rubbish. So thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us. So what was it that attracted you to this movie?
I'm a bit of a music fan. I'm obsessive about music, and I'd been working with Dan on another project. Dan Gill, the director, and he'd mentioned this script to me a while ago, and he mentioned there was a character in it who was a musician or ex-musician. He told me the premise of the story. I thought it sounded a lot of fun. Yeah. And so I knew it would be. I was looking for something that would be that would have a kind of levity to it, a bit of lightness, and this was exactly that. I'd been just finishing a project that was quite dense and quite heavy, and so the idea of kind of transforming myself into this craggy rocker was appealing.
Yeah, I suppose it's always that kind of state of like it's a chance to relive your youth.
Yeah,
and it seems like
I always. As I said, our music's been a part of my life forever, and I was part of bands when I was younger, so it was it was fantasy time. It was put on some leather
have a good time with this character. I had a lot of fun with it.
So you were saying like music's kind of been something that's been a huge part of your life.
And still is. I mean, I'm nerdily obsessive about it.
So what was like kind of the music when you were like younger, when you were courting women, and like what was the soundtrack to your kind of younger days?
It's been through so many different phases. You see, I kind of, when I was, around the age of 16, I was listening to kind of a lot of rock. But then I was obsessed with punk. But then I was also getting influence from my older sister, who was into kind of disco and soul. So I had this kind of combination of sort of punk, the whole punk, at the time punk and disco were sort of opposed to each other. It was like, it was considered kind of, you had to be in one camp or the other, but actually I found a lot to love about both, and I still do. You know what I mean? I love, I love punk, and I still love soul and funk and disco. So and actually, funnily enough, now I kind of search for things that are kind of hybrids. That I look for something that might be a bit of punky soul. I love that. I'm just endlessly searching for something new.
So was it like a good excuse to dive into all that type of music and try and find some influences to infuse into Lenny, and think like, I really would maybe love this guy as a kid, or maybe I can imagine this.
It was just a lot of fun thinking about what his journey had been, because he's a kind of, he's a kind of guy who believes he's kind of possibly a little more legendary than he really is. You know what I mean? He's believed his own press somehow. He feels he's a bit of a, he's been on the fringes of a lot of major events and bands in his time, but never really been at the centre of anything. But he tells a good story. He's a lot of fun to be around. He's great. He talks the talk, and he was always somewhere around when, you know what I mean. There'll be some story about Morrissey and the Smiths or the Gallagher brothers, and he'll have a great story to tell about, there was this night in Manchester in whenever it was, the late 80s or the early 90s. He's someone that likes to hold court. He's someone who likes to tell a great story, and probably really would have liked to have been right at the centre of things, but never quite was. And so he's found himself in this pub as a kind of hub. He's a kind of, now he's just simply a kind of a mini legend in this bar. Yeah,
I think everyone in a bar thinks they're the mini legend.
So I think he probably feels he's just quite a bit more important than he really is. But that's fine. He's happily, and I just, Ian was talking recently about his character, the Curve, being kind of deluded, and there's a sense of they're both, they're both deluded in their own ways, but and kind of. Lenny sort of happily so. He doesn't want his bubble to be burst. Don't tell him he doesn't want to be told what he's not, as any of us. Don't, but he's, he enjoys being, and when these kind of young guys come to him and they're rehearsing in the bar, he's enjoying that kind of slightly fatherly, the cross between being a father and a kind of wise old lag. He's enjoying that kind of, I could tell you a few things about rock and roll boys, and he loves that. And I've taken more drugs than you've had hot dinners. He loves that he's buying into a kind of a mythology about himself.
So was it a good excuse to go around some East End pubs and visiting the landlords there, doing some research and billing some few pints to the production company, going, I'm just out for some research?
This is purely research. I'm going to need to spend quite a lot more time here. Yeah, absolutely. It's characters like this are just a lot of fun, and then choosing the clothes. It was pure fun. It was pure fun. And
did you get a lot of kind of responsibility for that, and not just a case of like turning up and going, here's your costume? Did you get to go out and pick the clothes and
it was a case of just having some ideas about what I thought would be right, and collaborating with the costume people, saying, here are my thoughts, what are your thoughts, and then coming together with what they managed to find and what thoughts I had, and then that's always seems to be how it comes together. Your ideas, their ideas, and then you kind of somehow meet in the middle, and you find something that works for both of you, really.
And are you looking forward to the premiere of the movie tonight?
Well, I would be. Unfortunately, I can't make it because I'm doing a reading round the corner of a script at the Travers for
Is it Gerard Johnson?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm doing that tonight, and then I'm going to hot foot it over to the after the screening to the Modern Life Q&A.
Yeah. Are you
so
looking
I've got a
forward
busy night in Edinburgh.
Absolutely. Are you looking forward to your stage play tonight? It sounds like a really exciting project that they've got on.
It is. I am. Yeah, we've literally just been rehearsing today. I am. It's an unusual. Live reading is a kind of. It's a curious thing to do because you can never quite get it to the stage. It's not a performance in the sense that you can. With a play, you want it to kind of take off and leave the pages behind. We haven't got the time to do that, but I think it's a great play, and Gerard's he's a really good director, and he's brought some kind of filmic ideas to this performance, which I think will make it really quite interesting.
Sounds like you've got quite a diverse evening ahead then.
I have. I really have.
And then in the film, there's this obsession with what would be your desert island discs. What would be your kind of desert island disc? What would you pick out as the one album that you would have to take away?
It's like the most impossible question because I'm, it's like my desert island disc next week might be a different one to last week. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I've got records that I will always go back to, records that I love, like the Stevie Wonder records from the 1970s are, there are always, there's another record by, there's a record by Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys called Pacific Ocean Blue, which is a beautiful record, which I always come back to as a, I'll never stop loving it, but they're all, my passions, I do kind of, I get infatuated with records, and so my favourite can be a different one.
Absolutely.
Each week. But I do that Dennis Wilson album is very close to my heart.
Have to revisit that one, that's for sure.
Do you know it?
I'm familiar with it. Yeah, I'm sure it's in my dad's vinyl collection somewhere.
It's a great 70. It was a sort of lesser known. It was a kind of personal project for Dennis Wilson, and it didn't really. I don't think at the time it was a very big record, but it's become a kind of. It has a kind of cult following. It's brilliant.
Absolutely. So what's next on the horizon for you after Modern Life is Rubbish and your stage play tonight? What are you working on next?
I'm going to be doing something for television. It hasn't been announced yet, so I probably shouldn't say what it is. But I'm literally next week. I'm starting something for TV. So I'm going to be shooting throughout the summer. So that'll be
fascinating. And
that'll be good. And it's very different from my last job, and that's what it's all about.
It sounds like you've got two different jobs tonight and stuff. Q&As for a nice romantic comedy, and then a stage play beforehand.
Gritty read through followed by Q&A for.
Hopefully you're not still in character by the time you get to this Q&A. It might be a bit too intimidating.
Yes, we've got a question. Oi, shut up.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And
no problem.
Looking forward to sharing Modern Life is Rubbish with everyone. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Good to meet you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.